this is Judy from Patterns for Pirates, and I'm going to show you how to add or take away length on our new bodysuit pattern. It's pretty simple and straightforward, but I like to show it off sometimes on patterns like this that go a long ways on the body, because sometimes it's a little intimidating if you're a beginner sewist and you have to add or take away length from something more than just an inseam or a top. I'm going to do the bodysuit option since that's trickier than the crop option. Some of the measurements that are absolutely super important for you to take are your total height. I am going to be using myself as an example. I'm 5'10". The average height that I draft for on this bodysuit and all my adult feminine patterns is 5'5". It's the average height as of the last standard measurements that I use, and so that's what I use. So that means I'm 5 inches taller than what I draft for, and I have to add in that length throughout the pattern. Now, usually I just do this digitally for myself, but I'm going to show you how to do it on your paper pattern piece. And whether you're taller or shorter, the method is going to be the same, and I'll show a little bit of shortening as well, even though I'll really be working around lengthening the pattern for myself. Your total height is important. So I'm 5 inches taller than the average height. It's just something we want to take note of and catalog in our brain, or maybe even write down on a little notepad all these measurements. Another important measurement is your total trunk length, and I'm actually going to show you how to take that. So here is my handy dandy measuring tape. I'm going to slip off my cozy wrap. Alright, so your total trunk length is going to start at your shoulder. It doesn't really matter which one. And it's going to go down between your legs. It's a little awkward to take, I'm not gonna lie. Between your legs, up your back, and back up to your shoulder. Oh, of course. Back up to your shoulder. And this tape measure is almost even too short for me because I am tall. So you want to meet them at the very top. Another measurement that you might want to note is right at the very bottom. You think it might be in half, but it might not be. So that would be your total trunk length. You'll want to compare that to the total trunk length of what size you measure. So I measure a medium almost everywhere. I have size large arms. So you'll see when you see my pattern pieces that I have a medium and a large printed. Mostly I'll be using the large everywhere except for my arms. We can pretend are muscles. So that's it. My total trunk is 4 inches longer than a size medium trunk on the standard measurements. So that means I need 4 more inches in my trunk. I split it up 2 in the front and 2 in the back. I'm pretty proportional, and that works great for me. Another measurement that is super important is your side waist length. Unfortunately, this is another measurement that is pretty tricky for people to measure a lot of times, and this is why it's really important to take all of these measurements and make a nice sensical picture of where your length is. It's important to take all of these measurements and make them a pretty picture as a whole instead of just one of these measurements, because a lot of times these trickier measurements you might have measured off a little bit. So let's say you're only 2 inches taller, you're 5'7". You measure your total trunk length and you measure 5 inches longer. It's probably not accurate. You probably don't have 2.5 inches of extra height from here to here and no extra height on your legs at all. So it's just something you want to keep in mind. Am I creating a total picture of my body that makes sense? Maybe your inseam does measure exactly the 5'5", and you don't have any length from your legs down. Then that would make perfect sense for you. So it's just important to take a lot of measurements and compare them to make them make sense. Your side waist goes from your armpit down to your waist. Your waist is right where you bend. It is above your belly button. Here's my belly button. It's above my belly button, below my rib cage. So here's my last rib. Here's my waist. Here's my belly button. Your natural waist is in between your rib cage and your belly button. Okay, if you sing I'm a little teapot, it's right there. Okay, your armpit does not go all the way up into your armpit. Not like this. Okay, it goes down here where your armpit ends. So where your armpit ends, you think where your bra hits, where your tank will hit. So my side waist is 9 inches. The average is 8, so I'm 1 inch longer. Okay? The other measurement you want to take is right from your waist, again where you bend, to the fullest part of your hip. This is another one that's tricky, unfortunately, because it's hard to eyeball exactly where your very fullest part is. Okay? So the average is a little over 8. I think it's 8 1/4. And mine is about 9 1/4. So again, another inch. So if you remember, my total trunk length is about 4 inches longer than a medium, because I have 2 inches on the front and 2 inches on the back that are longer. From here to here, I'm an inch longer. From here to here, I'm an inch longer. 2 inches makes perfect sense. This is what we want. We want them all to add up into a cohesive picture. If they don't, you just need to think reasonably about your total height, your inseam, your hip to waist, your waist to bust, and where your extra height is. I tend to be very proportional. I have an inch, and then I have an 1.5 inches going down to my ankle. And so pretty proportional. It's just important. I see a lot of times like, oh, I'm only 5'5", but I have a 10-inch side waist. Most likely not. Most likely you're measuring wrong. You probably do not have 2 extra inches if you're 5'5". It's a difficult measurement to do. So if you do your total trunk length and you don't have any extra height, you probably don't have a 10-inch side waist either. I say that very lovingly. I see that a lot, and I don't want you to add all this extra length and then have all these wrinkles here because you didn't need the extra length. So make sure you take your total height, your inseam, your hip to waist, your side waist, which is from your tank top line or bra line down to your natural waist, and make sure they make a nice cohesive picture for you before you decide how much length to add. All right, after that long spiel, I'm going to show you my overview of my pattern piece and where I like to add length and how I like to add length. And I'll also show, just in case you want to take length out as well. So come on. All right, here we are looking down at the pattern piece. I'm going to try my best to work on this and not get in the way of the camera. I haven't named this, so you'll see mine's just called Bodysuit right now. I always have a really difficult time naming patterns. As you can remember, here is the waist. I'm going to go ahead and just highlight these for you. Here's the waist. Here's the hip. I add that in on my patterns to help those of us who need to add or take away length. I did not put the bust on this one, but the bust is generally right around here. just under the arm side. So from the armpit to the waist, I need to add 1 length, and from the waist to the hip, I need to add another inch. I am not going to add anything down here. I am adding my whole 4 inches of my total trunk here and here. So I'm going to take orange now so you can see it a little bit better. And just about midway through, I'm going to slash and spread my pattern the 1 inch that I need, using my ruler to make sure this is nice and straight with the fold line. I'm just going to do the same thing down here, about midway through the hip and the waist. I would repeat this exact same thing on the front piece as well. So I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to slice it all the way through. There we go. I'm going to be using these to hold my pattern pieces down for you guys. If you're tracing this onto something else, you could use tape. I can still remember my mama doing this when I was younger with school papered lines, and she'd use the little lines to help her keep everything nice and straight. So you want to keep your fold line nice and straight. That's like your grain line. I do not have a grain line on here yet because this is just a tester pattern with not all the labels completely done, and of course not a name yet. So I'm just using my fold line to keep it nice and straight. If your pattern piece ever doesn't have a fold line, it's absolutely necessary that you draw a big old straight grain line from the very bottom of your pattern to the very top and make sure that stays nice and straight. Okay, I'm using the grid on my cutting board to keep it nice and straight. If you don't have a grid to work on, you're going to have to use a ruler of some sort to make sure this stays nice and straight. There we go. I added 1 inch here, 1 inch here. It's all set. You can trace it off now. The only thing I'll mention besides that is that when you are retracing, I'm going to go into the medium here, is that you want to go to the smallest point, or like this is the waist, right? Down here is about the waist. And so you want to go into that and then out to this longest one and then retrace your line here. I'll use blue. And that is just spreading out that curve. So as you can see, I'll be losing some width here and adding some width here. That's usually how it goes on almost all the pieces, whether you're taking length out or adding length. You're going to be slightly changing this outer line. So this one is just barely different here. I'm using a French curve right now. A French curve is so nice to have when you're altering your patterns, So I'm lining it up here at this very widest point, and then up here at this smaller point, not at the very smallest, right here where it starts to curve out, and I'm just going to retrace that line. So this one is even more of a tiny of a difference, so it just adds a little bit here, takes a tiny bit away here. Smooth out your curves nice and evenly so that you don't have any bulges along here. And it truly is like you're just stretching this out, which is what we want. We don't want to just add length here and here. We really want it throughout the whole pattern So that's what we're doing right here when we retrace this from the smallest to the widest, is we're really stretching that out to make sure we're getting an accurate lengthened pattern for yourself. And I'll show really quickly on the front if I were to need to shorten my pattern. So here's my front. Let's just pretend I'm 5 inches shorter than the pattern so that I can cut the same on mine. So that later on I can actually lengthen it like I need. This pattern also relies on vertical stretch. And so I'm actually probably adding in slightly more than I need, because I would need 2 inches if it doesn't stretch. I went ahead and added my full length because I'd rather it be a little long than a little short. But this is a little snugger. It has a little negative ease on the vertical. So I could actually probably add slightly less than normal. And be okay. Okay, so here I am, and let's say I need to take out 1 inch. So I'm just going to overlap these exactly 1 inch. I'm just using my grid line here. There we go. And as you can see now, these don't match up. So I would need to retrace from the wide point to the small point. And see how now we have a nice smooth line. There we go. Nice smooth line. Same thing from here, from one of the smallest points to one of the widest points is what you want. A lot of times you're going to have to pick up and move your French ruler around a little bit to get that perfect, because a lot of times you need to curve one way, then curve the other. So there you go. And here is the other line right here. There we go. It's a little snugger on the tank top options, so you don't have that gaping under your arms that a lot of curvy figures get. So there you go. This would be shortening for someone that's about 5 foot and proportional. All right. I hope that really helps everybody out there who needs to shorten or lengthen their pattern, whether it's this bodysuit or, you know, another one-piece swimsuit or bodysuit out there. There's nothing like a custom fit garment, and I can't wait to see yours. Don't forget to share with us.